Welcome to the We're Good podcast, where we are celebrating the everyday brilliance of people working toward a more positive world. If you're looking for the good that's taking place around you, you've come to the right place. The Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington has been making a difference in young people's lives for 140 years. You might have heard of these amazing clubs, but what kind of impact are they having here in our region? Today, you'll meet Dr. Minnie Anand and hear her personal story about why she knows, without a doubt, that the Boys and Girls Club helps young people with growth and a sense of belonging. Welcome to the We're Good podcast. I'm Leah Necessary Brownlee, your host, and we're excited today to be joined by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington. And joining us today is someone who we know knows this organization inside out. It is Dr. Minnie Anand, who is the Director of Impact and Innovation at the club. And we're so happy to have you here today.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm super excited to talk about my journey, talk about the wonderful work Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington is doing, and excited for the invitation. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And of course, we're talking about We're Good, and there's so much good going on at the Boys and Girls Club. You told me, which I did not realize, Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington is 140 years old.
Yeah.
That is amazing. You fall under Boys and Girls Club of America. So a lot of people might think, well, I know what they do. But what I want you to shed light on today, Minnie, is what they do for this region.
Yeah, so let me paint the picture. So, Boys and Girls Clubs of America is the national organization, and we call it the movement. But within the movement, though, there are almost 1,000 organizations, 1,000 separate 501(c)(3)s throughout the different regions, throughout the different states, on native lands, across the country, and military installations for our young people who are part of military families. And then within each organization, we have specific clubs. And those clubs will be the ones that you see in your neighborhood. And we have about 5,000 of those. So we have one large organization, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which is a movement. Then we have 1,000 or so organizations, which Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington is one. And then we have about 5,000 clubs, of which Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington has about 25.
So you have 20.
We have 25 sites that are located within this region. So we have sites in Northern Virginia, we have sites in Montgomery County and Prince George's County in Maryland, and then we have sites in DC. And then we have one special site, which is our virtual site, which was started during COVID as a way to keep our young people connected. The tagline, you can't come to the club, so we're bringing the club to you. And while it was an intervention during COVID, we saw how successful it was for our young people who were homeschooled, for our young people who didn't have a club in their neighborhood, for our young people that may have medical challenges that don't allow them to be in crowds. And so we kept it going. So Clubhouse at Your House is going strong 5 years later. So here we are. So Greater Washington, we really serve the young people in the DMV region. And with Clubhouse at Your House, we really kind of serve across the country and internationally.
That is such a scope. It's
Yes,
a
ma'am.
huge scope. But tell me about here
Okay.
locally.
Okay.
Who do you serve? Who do you see on a daily basis? Who are your kids?
So one of the things when I think about Boys and Girls Clubs and you walk into a room and you see 100 kids, our mission is to serve boys and girls who need us most, the young people who need us most, right? And all young people need us in a different way. So if you walk into a room with 100 young people, you're going to see 101 different definitions of need, because need looks different from, little Johnny to Maria to Sandrine to Demetrius. Each of those young people have a different need. Some are latchkey kids and their parents work, and so they need a safe place. Some may need financial assistance. They may need food to get them from the end of the school day to the next school morning. Some of them, have been bullied at school and they feel like they just want a place to belong, a place where they fit in, a place where they have friends. And Boys and Girls Club, we offer all of that plus more. So when you see those different definitions of need, we meet those in ways that I think other organizations may not be able to, because we focus on the holistic child. And I think that's the key. That's the secret sauce, to be honest. It's not just we want to do athletics, so we want to make sure our young people are competitive and they understand sportsmanship and they're able to, have opportunities to do that. We also want to make sure that they're academically sound, so they have STEM and they have arts, financial literacy. We want to make sure that they make good decisions, they vote, they recycle, right? But the secret is when you do all of those things and you make sure that every part of the young person is touched and developed, that's when I think you see the true impact. And that's what we do at Boys and Girls Clubs.
And when you talk about it, people that aren't watching us right now, your face lights up. You can tell that you just love it. So tell our audience a little bit of your journey, Minnie. It is it's a great journey, and what brought you to the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington.
So currently I'm in my 12 and a half year, if you will. November will be my 13th year with the clubs. I'm currently the vice president of impact and innovation. This is my fifth role with the organization, but it didn't start that way. So I have to kind of go back a little bit before I started so you understand how I got here. So I'm from Valdosta, Georgia, a really small town in Valdosta. It's not that small. It's small-ish, right? It's not that small.
But I'm from
But
a
if
small
not,
town in North Carolina.
there
I
we
know
go.
what you're talking about.
Right. So it's not, we have more than one stoplight, but we're not Atlanta, we're not DC. So that's fair. And I applied to college and I knew I wanted to go to Georgetown because at that time I wanted to be the president of the United States and change the world. And I said, what better place than Washington, D.C. to do that? So I really only applied to one. I applied to two schools. I got waitlisted at the other. We won't discuss that, but I got waitlisted the same day I got accepted into Georgetown. So my life was perfect. So I came to DC and I came for government. I took my first government class and I was like, who's doing this for 4 years? I was like, not this girl. So the next semester, I had signed up for all of my core classes, like my prereqs, and I had one more spot, and there was a class called Intro to Linguistics. I didn't even know what a linguistic was, right? I had never heard of that. But I was like, ooh, it's right next to my other class, and it doesn't meet on Friday. So this is very convenient and as a freshman, you don't want it on Fridays.
Right.
And I walked into this class, and there was this old white guy, and that's how he described himself, this old white guy. And little did I know he was actually a really famous linguist. And I fell in love. For the first time, I felt affirmed in my identity as a Black woman from the South and how I spoke and how people understood, how I could code switch, how I could use language in a different kind of way from others. And I loved it. So I took another class, another class. I ultimately graduated with general linguistics as my undergrad degree. Then I got a master's in theoretical linguistics, and then ultimately I got a PhD in sociolinguistics. But talking about full circle and this sense of belonging, the old white guy, Dr. Ralph Bassold, he actually did a study of DC in the 1960s. And in 2016, I was able to replicate his study. And I actually got to interview someone that he interviewed in 1966. I got to interview them again in 2016. So full circle in this idea of when you find that place that you belong, things work out. And I think that is actually a very good parallel to Boys and Girls Clubs. And so how did I get to the clubs and why is that story important? Well, because I went to Georgetown, and we're all overachievers at Georgetown. One of my best friends, a few years later, he was on the board for Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington, the DC region. And I had just come out of a divorce and I had moved back home with my mom. And he called, he's like, hey, I'm on the board. There's a great job open. He's like, I know you're trying to reset your life. And he's like, you should apply. So ultimately, I applied, but they were at the end of the application process and I didn't get that job. But I was like, this organization is the right fit for me. It's time for me to be back in DC. So I came so that didn't work out. I got the rejection, but they called, they said, just wait, there may be something else opening up. So 2 months later, I get another call and I get into another interview process. And lo and behold, ultimately about 3, 4 months later in November, I ended up being the supervisor of the position that I initially
Oh
applied
my
for.
goodness. Okay.
And so when I started with Boys and Girls Club, it was about a connection. It was about someone I knew, and they knew I was looking for a new opportunity. They knew that I could fit into this space, and I enjoyed this work with young people. And that's how I got to Boys and Girls Clubs. And I haven't looked back since. I've been here for almost 13 years.
And how did the linguistics, how did all of that kind of make you understand, like you knew that Boys and Girls Club was where you wanted to be?
So it's so funny. The paths didn't overlap in the way that like, oh, I'm using my research. I'm not a statistician. I'm not a sociologist. So my work didn't overlap in that way. But also it helped me understand how to communicate with young people versus my staff versus board members versus community members, right? It really helped me understand that we can give the same message, but in order for you to receive it, for it to be legible to you, we have to give it differently. And I think that's really what the degree helped me understand and linguistics helped me understand. But also when I was working on my dissertation, one of the things I really was focused on was capturing the story. So DC, we know gentrification, we know demographically is shifting. It used to be majority Black. Now it's not, it's a plurality. And so Black people used to be 75%. Now it's 41% Black. That's a big difference in a span of 40, 50 years. That's a really big shift. So what it helped me realize was these stories of these people in the city are really, really important, just like the stories of the kids in the club, because each kid comes to the club with a different story, with a different circumstance, with a different dream, with a different need, right? And I wanted to understand that. So actually part of my dissertation work was really looking at some of the kids and families in our clubs and the staff to really capture their stories as DC is changing. How do we capture what their experience of DC is? And I think that that's been invaluable. And so while the work is not directly linked, it really helps me in how I think and how I make connections with young people, and how I make connections with our families and our different stakeholders.
Tell me about the families and the children that you see. I'm sure you have seen some major success stories. What is it about this club and the way it works that really had you staying? What is your why for staying?
Yeah, what is there's so many things that I could say contribute to my why. Um, so I'm gonna talk a lot. I'll start with some big stories and then I'll talk about one that's really, really special. So when we look at our young people, we see, of course, everybody knows nationally about like Denzel. We know about Magic Johnson. We know about J Lo and Ashanti, right? We know Courtney Vane. Like we know those names, right? But we look at our young people locally. We have a young man who's working on Capitol Hill right now, Ryan Washington. He came from our club, right? We have Asha, who just graduated from Ohio State a year early, debt free, who wanted to be the president of the United States, but realized that she can affect change differently. So now she wants to be a local, politician that really gets to grassroots, policies and really affects change on a very local level. But she was our National Youth of the Year 3 years ago, and we'll talk a little bit more about Youth of the Year.
Yeah.
But we look at our young people who are just doing amazing things. We have young people who started at the club, 5, 10 years ago as young people. Now they work at the club.
We're gonna meet somebody.
We're gonna meet
Meet
somebody
them.
just in just a little while.
Yeah.
But I look at last week we had our Center of Transformation and we went over to Amazon. And so one of the executives at Amazon was a club kid. And he talks about how the club saved his life and changed his life. And then he became a club director and now he's pouring back into our club kids, right? Those are the stories. That's why we see the impact of the club. But I'm going to do one that's even more personal. So I have a 14-year-old daughter. God bless everyone with teenagers. It's an interesting age. It's not as fun as when they're, trying all the new foods and putting everything in their mouth, but you learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that I will say that really changed and made the clubs much more personal for me was when she was 6. So my daughter has special needs. She has cerebral palsy, and she went to our Clubhouse 6. And it was the first time that I could see that regardless of her ability, regardless of her ability to talk, her ability to run as fast as the other kids, they all made her feel special.
Mm.
That was the time that I knew that she was in a place where she belonged. And if it did it for my daughter, I know it's done it for hundreds and thousands of other kids. And so that's a really personal moment and a personal testament to the impacts of the clubs. She still talks about her kids and her club, and they have to get on the bus and go on the trip. And when I go to the club, they're like, "Where's Hasana?" That's my daughter's name. They're like, "Where's Hasana? You're Hasana's mom." That's all. I'm only Hasana's mom. And I
Right.
love that, right?
It's great.
Because
That's right.
but because that's her place. And so when I think about why I do this work, I want every parent to be able to have that moment. I want every parent to know and every caregiver to know that their young people, when they walk through our blue doors, that their young people belong there, they're safe there. They're not only going to survive, but they're going to thrive. And that's what makes it really personal for me.
Thank you for sharing that story.
No
Thank you
problem.
so much.
You're
And
welcome.
and that sounds like it was just the right place for her. And as you
Mhm.
said, there's a right place for so many. I want to backpedal because you said something about the Amazon executive. And I know we're going to talk to 2 participants in just a little while, but said it saved his life.
Yep.
Tell me, how does the Boys and Girls Club save someone's life. That is impactful.
Yeah, and so sometimes when we think about saving lives, we think of it can go in a wide range, right? I can literally save your life. And we had a story, I can tell you a story about where a staff member literally like saved a young person's life who was having a reaction, and we realized that the kid was actually having a severe allergic reaction, and they got them to the hospital, but we didn't know they were here for a testing of their eyes. And when the people came in for the to test their eyesight, they saw something growing in their eyes, some kind of, I don't know, mass or something that was some kind of reaction. They got them to ER. Now, had that gone on for a little longer and undetected, that could have severely impacted their seeing and or their life. So when I say we save lives, literally, but I'm actually speaking more figuratively. So being at the Boys and Girls Club, right? We are open when schools are closed. So whether that be after school, whether that be summer. And so we know that if you look at a lot of juvenile crime, it happens, the peak hours are 3 to 8.
Mhm.
And those are the hours usually that our clubs are open. And so when he could have chosen to go and hang out with his friends that may not have been making the best decisions, or when he could have, made some decisions that weren't going to lead him down a path of doing what's right and being good, he chose to come to the club. And so it saved him from the consequences of those poor choices. It saved him and helped him realize that there's better if he does better, if he makes different choices. So it gave him the opportunity to go down the right path. It gave him the opportunity to see that I don't have to cause trouble. I can really choose other options. I can choose, and there's going to be great opportunities um, behind door number two. And so we provide that door number two for so many young people, right? And that's how we save lives. When you think about, for some people, they saw no way out of their neighborhoods except, decisions that would have landed them perhaps in prison or in the cemetery, but they chose other options, right? They were able to play sports and they were able to get sports scholarships. They were able to learn this new thing about chemistry, and now they're excelling in the university. They were able to be exposed to coding, and now they have an amazing job at, Google or Apple, right? Like these are really what happens to these things really happen to our young people because of opportunities and exposure at the Boys and Girls Club. And so it saves lives and it changes lives.
It's amazing, and it's so important for people to know, and you can't do all of this without the support,
Right.
right? So what do you need? Does your local need?
Yeah. So as we are here in this region, one of the things I want to stress again is, as I talked about earlier, is that we have the National Boys and Girls Clubs, which is Boys and Girls Clubs of America. But then we have about 1,000 organizations across the country, Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington being one. One of the things, and we know that we can do a lot of things. We focus a lot on the mission, but the mission takes money. And one of the things that's really, really important is funds and support. So whether that be, in kind donations, which are great, but also or gifts for specific things. But one of the things that really helps us the most are unrestricted gifts. And saying, hey, I want to support the mission of Boys and Girls Clubs. And I trust that you're good stewards to say, you're going to make my dollars go far. Because no one thinks about, how do we make sure that we fund the data, the data analyst? Like, no one's like, oh, yes, I'm going to go fund the data analyst. But in order for us to tell you that, we serve 93% non-white, we serve, 72% of our young people qualify for free and reduced lunch. That's the data analyst. We need somebody to do that work, right?
Right.
Because everybody wants to fund the mentoring programs. We need that too. But also the things that the non
That make
cool
it click.
things.
That make
Right.
it click.
We need the backstage stuff.
Okay.
And so like any of those things, but also opportunities for our young people, for them to see the world differently. And we need friends. We need friends who know other people who will support our mission. Those are the things that we need.
And also, we're running out of time.
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
believe it, but I want to talk a little bit because one of those things that you put a lot of emphasis on through all of this is the Youth for Tomorrow. Can you give us an idea of what that is? Because we're going to talk to
Two of our young
two of
people.
our young people who are very involved in that.
So yeah, so when we think about our young people and thinking about preparing today's leaders, today's young people for tomorrow's leadership and to be tomorrow's change agents, one of our big programs is the Youth of the Year program. Youth of the Year is the highest honor that you can win in Boys and Girls Clubs of America, but also at your club. And so essentially what Youth of the Year is it's a leadership program. that looks at young people who excel in their club, whether they give back, they mentor, they come to the club every day, but they find a way. The club truly saved them. The club changed them in some kind of way.
Just like what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
And
And
it's
so
Youth of the Year.
it's Youth of the Year.
Yeah.
No worries, because they are the youth of tomorrow, right? They're the leaders of tomorrow, so they have to be the Youth of the Year today to lead tomorrow.
That's right.
And so what happens is we start with a local club competition, and so they're selected in their club. And these are young people who are 14 to 18, and they have to have been club members for at least 2 years.
Okay.
And they're selected their club, and then we go to an organization competition. And from the organization, they go to a state level. From state level, they go to the region. And there are 6 regions. There are 5 regions, and then the military. And then they go to the national competition. Just to let you know how big and it's a scholarship program. So at each stage, they get a different scholarship.
It's great.
And just to let you know how large the program is, currently 2 of our national sponsors are Kohl's and Toyota. And so the young people get a shopping experience. The national winner gets a shopping experience at Kohl's and a brand new car from Toyota and a $50,000 college scholarship.
It's amazing.
So, and so as they go up each and every level, the competition gets harder and harder. But it really is talking about the young people who can talk about how the club has changed them, how the club has shaped them, how the club has opened doors for them. And we're going to meet 2 amazing young women who have gone through the Youth of the Year process and who can talk about how the club has shaped their lives. So please most definitely give it up for Miss Vera and Miss Nola. So let me tell you a little bit about these 2 young women who are at different stages in their lives, but who I think will talk about the impact of Boys and Girls Clubs and the Youth of the Year program. So Miss Nola was our 2019 Southeast Region finalist. And she had been a club member for a really long time. Her mom works at the club. But one of the things she talks about is how the club really made her as strong as a rock. And she'll tell you a little bit more about what rock stands for. But the club came to them when they were at the lowest point. And I think her resilient spirit, just you will fall in love with her because she talks about being resilient, and in the struggles, and even through all of the things, being optimistic. So I'm super excited for you to meet her. And a side note, Nola was so amazing. Nola now works for us. So not only was she a club kid, but now she is a club staff. She's one of our VIPs, and we're very, very excited about that. And then the other young lady you will meet is Miss Vera. And Miss Vera actually just graduated from college, not college, high school. On her way to college in the fall. She just graduated about a month ago. I'm super excited for you to meet her as well. So Vera is the baby of 3 sisters, all who were club members. But she talks about how the club really gave her space to be her own person, and she wasn't just the baby sister, that she got to be Vera. And I think her family's struggles, but also just her community triumphs and what the community meant to her and what the club meant to her. I think their stories are both going to compel you and convince you that Boys and Girls Clubs is the best place for young people, for inclusion, for support, and for just life-changing opportunities.
Growth.
And most definitely. Watching these young women over the last several years of their lives, since I've come into their lives, has been an absolute pleasure and privilege. And I hope that you love them just as much as I do.
Oh, we know we're going to, but we're so excited that you have told our audience to stay tuned because it's going to be great to meet them. Thank you for sharing your stories today, though.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing not only about the club, but your personal story as well. And we wish your daughter well. And we just thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, because we're good.
We're good. That's right. And your website is going to be on our website. Your website is?
bgcgw.org.
And that will be on the we'regood.net website. We hope that you will definitely follow and share what you've learned today, and stay tuned because we're going to meet Vera and Nola. Thank you so much for joining us today, because we're good and you're good and we can all make a difference.